women are always talked about as gossiping. These
Mhm.
men are gossiping way as much as women. I mean, how about that gym scene? I thought that was so
Oh, I
comical.
loved the gym scene.
Like they go
Yes.
from one exercise to another, like they're gossiping on the spin bike, they're gossiping on the rowing machine, they're gossiping with lifting weights. And I did think, you know what, men, because I do this too. We gossip all the time, but it's always centered around activities. And maybe it's because where we gossip is um centered on um I don't know, centered on um activities that are outside of the house. Like women when they're gossiping, it's at brunch or they're having
Mm,
coffee. Like is that the
yeah.
distinction of what we say is gossiping is where it takes place? Want to listen to this Ivory Tower Boiler Room episode ad free? Head on over to our Patreon, where you will get this episode and all of our episodes ad free. And you can see our video episode, including this one right now, where you'll see my beautiful face and the guest's beautiful face. Who doesn't love that? And I am so excited to announce that all of you can get a 1 week free trial on our Patreon. Join the ITBR professor level and you unlock all of Mary's True Crime and Academia Patreon episodes, our rewatch show, including Queer as Folk and Smash. You can even listen to us dissect Scream and The Exorcist. And I heard, rumor has it, that we have an upcoming Britney Spears episode, a Fall of the House of Usher episode, and yes, even a Saltburn episode, which is going to be quite riveting. So head to patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room, join the 1 week free trial, and see what you're missing out on. And while you're at it, please follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Rate, follow, and subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Thanks so much, and I hope that you enjoy all of our Ivory Tower Boiler Room episodes. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room Rewatches Queer as Folk. I am joined here with a very special pop culture broadcast analyst, expert. Randomly Ronnie Jr.com is his website. But Ronnie, welcome to our Queer as Folk episode 8, which was
Mm.
really riveting, in my opinion. Um, so when did you, this is the question I ask everyone who joins me on this series. When did you first know about Queer as Folk?
Um, I was born in 80, so I was like a teenager when the show was out. I mean, saying this is like been said 2,000 times by 2,000 people. You would watch the show in your teen years, late teen years, you're in high school, you would have a complete ownership of who you were, in terms of like, because this is the 90s, um and you would be who you were, but there was just this one portion of you that never got really able to really look within. So you would go to this show that you heard of, and you're like, it's on Showtime, you're like, what is this show? And then the challenging thing is it was so in your face, which looking at it now as a being over 40 years old, it's like that was actually a good thing, that break of comfort was actually really good. But yeah, I would say that I got not inspired, I got connected to the show just by watching it like everyone did, with the mute button ready, with the channel back on the remote control ready to go, and just trying to peek in, and then also understanding or like asking questions like, oh, this represents this group of characters, but like, where do you fit in with that, you know what I mean? And try not to be so judgmental. But yeah, it came at a time where, like I said, born in 1980, so I'm literally turning 16 years old, getting a driver's license, kissing a girl for the first time, going to prom, so that is when this show is a show that I would take peeks at. Never fully watched the series until later in life,
Mhm.
but I've watched it enough when it aired. Yeah.
So how long had it been when I had you watch episode 8? How long had it been since you had seen that episode?
It had been a very long time. I did go back and sporadically watch some of the newer, some of this series, the Showtime series, which of course was the adaptation to begin with. But I went back and watched it when the Peacock streaming had another like reboot of sorts. So I
Yeah.
sort of, when I was watching that one, which I don't think that got its fair share or a chance rather to win. I would have liked to see a second season. I think they were on to something. But when that excitement of the new modern version of it, I guess would be the third version of it, that's
Mm.
when I would kind of go back. So that was what, maybe 3 years ago. But no, when you decided to unpack these stories, I was like, it had been more than 2 years. And watching this particular episode threw me for a loop. Like, I'm so in a lot of the work I do, I get to be very confident because really it's just like pop culture, fun conversations, communicating, creating a laugh. My dream job has always been to be a talk show host. But then I gotta tell you, I think I told you prior to us recording, it's like I could watch every episode and be totally chill. Oh, this is amusing, this is entertainment. But I was shaken a little bit knowing that we were going to come back, we would watch the show and then talk about it, because those emotions cut really, really deep. I don't know, it was worth the while, and I'm glad that you decided to take this on, because I've not said this in the vein of broadcast in such a long time. I was actually nervous AF to record with you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. And you have no reason to be nervous in the seat across from me in the virtual
Mm.
space. But just for everyone out there, um, episode 8 is called Babylon Boomerang. Uh, and it was directed by Steve DeMarco, written by Richard Kramer. And that's something else, Ronnie. Like, as I'm reading through all these episodes, there's a lot of writers. Like,
Mm.
at least a team of, so far there's been probably 4 different men. So that's unusual. Well, not always unusual, but I think it is interesting to
Mm.
see how they're all collaborating. And there's always a different director. So it came out February 4th, 2001. Um, and it says here Justin's father
Oh,
attacks. Yeah.
so the show came out into, see, I'm equating everything to like being late 90s, but I guess it's a little further away. Oh, how interesting. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's 2001. So Justin's father, I mean, late 90s is Sex in the City. Um,
Mm.
when that premieres, but Sex in the City is still ongoing here. So Justin's father attacks Brian outside Babylon. Michael gets a promotion at work. Justin moves in with Brian. That's our description. So right away, I have to ask you, the opening sequence is really riveting in my opinion, since not Michael's promotion storyline right away,
Oh
but
gosh. Yeah.
um which we can get into. It's one of my, now I haven't really had a yawn storyline, but that's starting to become one that I just want to pass over. But
Wait, Michael and how his boss.
Tracy,
Oh, you the girl.
yes, yes.
You're so what can I just ask one question? Why is the story a yawn?
Yeah. Well, a yawn in the sense of how dragged out. Um, not that the pressure he feels to be straight in the workplace, because that's
Mm-hmm.
really relatable at that
Mm-hmm.
time. I'm saying more of a yawn in the sense of with everything else that's so action packed, it just feels
Mm.
like they're trying to find a space for Michael to be um they're trying to find his arc. So I think that we can already see that it's a recipe for disaster. Like, he's closeted at work, he's
Yeah.
going to get this promotion, and then when they find out he's gay, it's going to be taken away from him. Like, I mean, even though I haven't yet watched that unfold, it just, you
Mm-hmm.
can see the setup.
I gotta say, I howled when Emmett said, so he said, "You want to bring your lady?" Do straight men say that? was Emmett is just like one of those characters that when we all watched the show years ago, we may have felt certain ways of Emmett, and then as we've all gotten older and his life's changed and evolved, I mean, his one-liners are just so good, and of course, the actor himself and all the stuff that he's done with his career is just so impressive. So to go watch that time in life and such a silly comment, I was cracking up. Do straight men really say that? Hey, Michael, why don't you go bring your lady?
Yeah.
What?
But I do have to say, um, like, even though I might have been unfair to say a yawn, I do think it is important in the sense, like, you're having me reflect on this, Ronnie, which is it is important with the straight community. Um, I feel like the straight community is really caricatured, which is
Mhm.
interesting because usually we see the gay community caricatured, but
Mm,
instead they're
interesting.
flipping it on its head, and the gay community and the queer community has more layers and emotional depth, and the straight community is kind of painted with a broad brush. Like, oh, do you call her a foxy? Do you still say she's a foxy lady, Michael? Or like
What? That
what
is
these straight
so
men say?
interesting. You're right about that. Yeah. And I don't even know if that was by design, but it is actually kind of the way we see the interaction in the world. I mean, the even though Michael wasn't out, the naive energy that that girl was like, "Oh my gosh, this means something." It's like, "Honey, read the room." Like, come
Yeah.
on, you know.
Well, first of
So,
all, he barely kisses her. I mean, it's like the steps are not, the
yeah.
flirtation is not there for you, Tracy. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
and
think,
also you don't want to negate women have went through that for
yeah,
guys, ourselves. Like we've 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 dated women, went to prom, did all these things as you were sort of at a different stage in your life. This one's a little different because it is the basis of a career goal that he has. So you're not saying it's like a yawn the actual issue. You're just like it took a
yeah.
while to get there. Yeah,
It's taking a while to get there.
yeah.
Um, but it could also just be, I do think if it was intentional to show the straight community in such comical ways
Mhm.
of almost as if they're doing Monty Python uh slapstick comedy. Like it does feel
Yeah,
very slapstick. Anytime we're at that Q mart, it's always um hyper exaggerated. Like just
yeah,
the straight people in the show seem so naive.
yeah.
Like as if they've never had sex even. Like, wait, what are you talking about?
Right, right.
But I will get to the other straight
Mm,
characters, which are Justin's mom and father, which I actually think is one of the most um intriguing, I thought, in this episode, what's
yeah.
happening between them. But yeah, okay. So Justin's father, he um finds Brian outside of Babylon. And how did you feel like right away in this episode we get Justin's father attacking Brian?
Um, the comical side would be like, well, was Justin's father at the bar as well? No.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it sucks. It sucks, and it's a little bit of like, when you have that misguided, I'm just doing this terrible thing to protect my son. That's the hardest. Like I said, watching it as entertainment was no problem. When I thought, oh gosh, we're gonna come and now recap it and really like dig deep a little bit, then I was like, oh, this is actually really. It's why the material is so wonderful because I felt so bad. I felt so bad that it accelerated a lot of things. It's like that thing. It's like you create these really awful situations and awful spaces where like Justin doesn't know where to go, what to do. He's still dealing with his own regular life, as a young adult. And then at the same token, everything is accelerated and you have to now make moves. I mean, when Brian goes, well, where are you going? He's like, I'll find somewhere to go. I mean, that just is so relatable to so many people where they've had to figure it out. So on one hand, you could judge all you want in terms of if you're Justin's father, this life is going to create this, it's going to create that, it's going to create this. Well, a lot of it on the hands of you. you
Hmm.
know, it's like, oh, you don't want to live this lifestyle. It's like, well, half of the dealings and the real challenge are coming from you. So, yeah, I mean, that's why we had that great counterbalance with the mother. That was wonderful.
Yeah, well, and I think that, do you really feel that in his gut, Justin's father really does think he's protecting Justin, or is he just lashing out with homophobia and using that as an excuse? Like, you're my son, I'm protecting you. Because we do get a later scene with Justin's father and him confronting Brian, not physically attacking him, but then
Yeah,
like him not even wanting Brian to be in his presence, and he doesn't
right.
even want to accept Justin as being gay. Like, it's not even about Brian, right? Because you thought, oh, it's just because Brian might be seen as a predator with his age. And then you realize, oh no, the father just doesn't want any aspect of Justin to be gay under his roof.
Well, yeah, he was like, "You're gonna. These are the rules that we have here." And Brian's conversation was quite valuable. It's like, okay, so he's gonna be here and not be himself whatsoever. I mean, that was really tough to watch. But yeah, no, to your question, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this could make you cringe to this day when you have a thing where you can almost like you could sleep at night. Justin's father, he could sleep at night because he's like, well, I'm doing it on the basis of protecting my son. No, you're not. But you know what I'm saying? No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Like, that irks me to no end, when you're able to put something out there as, I'm doing this for a noble reason. I think, you know, Justin's father just needs to understand what the root of his pain is. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
also, in terms of if we were going to give Justin's dad grace, it's like that concept you hear all the time. It's taken, the Justin, Brian, Michael, Ted, Emmett. It's taken everybody their own time frame to adjust, to learn, to to be their full selves. So I mean, yes, I understand that it's going to take. You can't just like overnight expect the dad to understand everything. But yeah, using that as an excuse is a kind of like a crock.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and thank God we have Jennifer, because how she's starting to connect to Justin, and that um like, you can see she sees her husband as monstrous, like what he
Hmm.
did to Brian. She doesn't agree with Brian being with her son, but she also doesn't want her son to be further pained. Like, she actually wants her son to have a connection, um, to her, to the family. So do you think that this is setting up just a splitting in their relationship? Like, can she actually still be married to a man who doesn't want to see her son happy and fully support her son?
That's a challenging question because the scene with her at Brian's office, oh my gosh. Seeing Brian be so like dismissive was like such his character. I definitely did enjoy that for some reason. Like, what are you doing in my presence? Is kind of like what he gave her. But in terms of her, I think what's interesting is it made me think this, and maybe I'm off base, but it made me think sometimes when there is, there's the two parents and one becomes, obviously the father was the villain. And so somewhat the mother kind of skates by as like, not really being that person, but there are still some issues that she has. I think when she was talking to Brian, I think a lot of it was, yes, nurturing. Like, I want at the very least for him to be safe and all these things. And I love him and tell him that we
Mhm.
care and all these things. But I think there was also a little bit of a struggle that a mother goes through when they have a young adult and they're becoming a grown up. And this, again, it shouldn't be, but this aspect of his sexuality accelerated even the way she has to like let him go be, his own self. And it kind of was like a bigger reality. If she had a straight son, she might, she can do all the things, the status quo, the white picket fence, the two kids, a dog, what is it, one car garage, whatever they say is what you should have. She's already going to have a separation anxiety.
Oh
So I
yeah,
feel
there's going
like,
to be growing pains. I mean,
yeah, so I feel like
for
there was like a
straight
little
children.
bit of, there was a little bit of it where she I don't know, like kind of, I think she also is just sad that her, that he's going to go out into the world and she's scared and she's protective. So that separation anxiety is where a little bit of it came from too. So again, I'm not saying she's a villain by any means. I don't know why I
Yeah, yeah.
equated the two, but it has more to do with just like her showing up for him. It's also like, damn, there's what will his life entail? I've prepared him for a life where I know for the most part what it will entail. And now all my control is gone. And so seeing it in the vein of a mother, I'm not a parent, but my gosh, that's got to be hard.
Yeah. Well, and I agree. I think she is coming from, I want to um protect and control situations. Like, she wishes that she could orchestrate his environment, and it's
Mm-hmm.
almost neurotic in a way, but good intentioned, where the father is completely living in a fantasy and wants to force his son to almost go through conversion therapy. This father says,
Mm,
"Oh, I'll send you to a
mm.
military school," as if a
Oh
military
gosh.
school will make you
Yeah.
straight. And I like want to say to the father, do you know how many like gay men are are in the military? Because there's actually a large percent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, the father reflected back to that one time in Vietnam. No, I'm kidding. It's like
yeah.
it's just like it's their own personal thing of their experiences, times they've been around men that they didn't feel comfortable with. It's all of that.
Yeah. Well, and the father's also operating from what I think still fuels homophobia, which is um like equating it with gender ideology, that you're not masculine enough, whatever that means to people. But,
Mm-hmm.
there are still people who think there are male roles and there are female roles. And I think
Mm.
if you already adhere to a binary between men and women and what they do, that if you're thinking that there's some kind of traditionalism, then you're going to think that being gay is like you didn't become a man, which,
Oh,
you know,
and also I think the
complete
sorry,
shit. Yeah.
but also, yeah, I mean, I think the father, I made the joke a second ago, but I think the father, reflecting in his life all of the experiences that he'd seen. But I think it's also like for some reason the father like thinks the world is looking at him like,
Mhm.
oh, you created this. That's really like that could have been added into the dialogue. Like that's, I mean, obviously it's not, the show's not about the father, but that's really where a lot of it comes from. That he now is like, you've humiliated me. What did I do to create this? Why? You know what I mean? It's like it has nothing to do with you. Your job as the father is to love on your child. That's it.
The holiday season may be behind us, but guess what's lurking around the corner? Picture that little baby with a bow and arrow. Yes, Valentine's Day is almost here, and I'm thinking of what gift can I get that my boyfriend will absolutely love and gush over. Well, he is a horror movie fanatic, so I think I have just the thing that he'll die for. Pun intended. My good friend Mandy Bangle is the owner of Mandy Made It, a craft company where she specializes in crochet and pre-cut handmade gifts. So whether your partner is a horror movie fanatic, I'm sure that they have a TV show they love. Maybe there's a book that they love, a music artist, a sports team that they cheer for. Mandy has you covered, from shirts, hats, beanie hats, which I love to wear at the gym, car decals, beer and coffee koozies, keychains, stuffed animals, signs that you want to put all over your apartment. She is ready to create any customized order. So head to Instagram right now, type in at Mandy Made It. That's Mandee made it. Slide into her DMs, and she is ready to start working on your order. Just send her a few ideas. You could say, "Hey, my boyfriend really loves horror movies." Or, "Hey, my boyfriend really loves the Broadway musical, Wicked." I'm sure she will figure out some concoction for you, and say that you heard her ad on the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, because she's going to give you an exclusive ITBR free gift. She's also working on a new line of ITBR merchandise, so I can't wait to share all of that information with you. Make sure you mention at Ivory Tower Boiler Room when your gift arrives from Mandy so I can share it out on our Instagram. I hope you all enjoy your gifts. Are you a fan of LGBTQ plus books, plays, movies, TV shows? Well, then I have the magazine for you. It's called The Gay and Lesbian Review. The GNLR is a bi monthly magazine of history, culture, and politics that publishes essays in a wide range of disciplines, as well as a slew of reviews of books, plays, and movies. Each issue brings you consistently intelligent, lively, thought provoking articles focused on a unifying theme, and it brings together the leading minds on the topic. So I just had on Dr. Richard Schneider Jr., the founder and editor-in-chief of the GNLR. For the GNLR's 30th anniversary, happy birthday, GNLR, Dr. Richard Schneider talked about their special volume called Outer Appearances, More Faces from the Annals of the GNLR, illustrations by Charles Heffling. They cover current LGBTQ artists such as Harvey Fierstein, Melissa Etheridge, Alan Cumming, James Whiteside, Alison Bechdel, and even David Sedaris, and of course, many others like Stephen Sondheim. There's even a supplemental issue that comes with your commemorative volume. And Andrew Halloran, the writer of Dancer from the Dance, he reviews a book called Morris about E.M. Forster's Morris, written by one of our ITBR guests, David Grevin. So we can't wait for you all to experience this beautiful 30th anniversary GNLR issue. Have you heard some of my GNLR interviews, including Dr. Andrew Lear's discussion about male love in ancient Greek society and Ignacio Darnad opening and blasting the closet door in the queer male art world? Well, definitely make sure you listen to them after this episode. Head to glreview.org. Make sure you subscribe to their magazine. You'll see there's a section that says subscribe at the top. Enter the promo code ITBR50. That's ITBR50 to receive 50% off. 50% off any print or digital subscription. Enjoy your reading.
To
Exactly.
shade, to advise, but definitely not to make life harder for them.
Mhm. Well, and I feel that where Jen is, the tension between Justin's parents is also how much does she feel that she can speak out against her husband? Like that's where the traditionalism is coming. Like,
Wow.
is
Yeah.
he as the husband in charge of the final say, or do I have a voice? And I think we're seeing her go through a transformation right now, not just about sexuality, but with her independence as a
Mhm.
woman. Like I think she was operating more in terms of this is what a mom does. And then she's thinking, but wait, maybe I'm not fully supported in this relationship.
True.
It's I see it all the time. I mean, we see it in culture all the time where um women are forced to, or they're like said, um there's an expectation, more so in straight coupling, I would say, but that, they could stay at home because then they don't have to work. And then the husband will provide all the money and then give her an allowance. And I'm thinking you're already setting her up to
Yeah.
be dependent on you. And
Yeah.
some men really thrive. Like Justin's father, I think, thrives on knowing that she depends on him for her
Mm.
money and support.
Well, I think
Um,
that was a tradition from yesteryear that a lot of men weren't very comfortable with seeing the change. But the change and allowing for independence was valuable for women, you know. Um, a lot of men got away with a lot of things in the day
yeah.
because of that structure. Yeah.
Well, and like I always say, there's nothing, I never want to pass judgment on a stay at home mom, a stay at home father, whoever wants to stay at home. But I also think if you're coercing your partner to not like use their education or work, or, you know, when you start to isolate them from their friends and their community, those are clear warning signs and a red flag of
Yeah.
manipulation. Um, and again, we don't know enough of the moms. Uh, community. Like, I don't know who her friends are. Like, we're not really in. I do think though she definitely is starting to align herself um with Michael's mom, not in this episode, but like she's had conversations with Michael's mom. Uh I think she's actually starting to come out too, but coming out in terms of independence. Like
Oh, I
I'm e-
love that.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm eager to see where Jen goes in the narrative because I
I
think she
love
has a lot to achieve. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that because yeah, I mean, really it is an experience for the person, like I said, Brian, Ted, Emmett, Justin, Michael, everybody, but like really that experience is so much bigger than like just defining your sexuality or your gender or whatever. I feel like yes, 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 like everyone could stand to go through an experience of coming out or coming into their own rather. And so I didn't even really add that into what I was kind of seeing watching it, but you are so right, and that is a beautiful comment. Yes.
Well, and don't you also think that there's like when they say that not only a child or your child comes out um when
Mm-hmm.
they're LGBTQ, but parents have to come out. And I think a lot of that is parents facing that their status quo they might have believed in doesn't exist. Like it's a condition that society creates. Like you were saying, if you care about what the community is going to say to you and judge you for your child not being in the white picket fence fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
that's a straight fantasy that has been created. It's not anything based in reality.
Yeah.
It's you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. So yeah.
There was one too many Disney movies that made you feel like there's only certain ways to do things. And, I think the thing to think about for people who have resistance to that or, did in the past, it's like, you got to think about it like this. Like we have all of our goals throughout life. And what far away from even this topic, like
Mhm.
people unfortunately get sick, people, there's tragedy sometimes. So as parents or as people, kind of loving on your family, you adjust to those things. Why should this be any different is really the only thing that I think when I watch this show.
Mhm.
You adjust to everything, you know what I mean? There's so many things that were never in the plan. There's some kids are, unfortunately they have moments where they are dependent on drug or alcohol. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of support in those spaces. You just wish there was support in the world that Justin is involved in at this moment. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that a line that really stuck out to me was when Debbie, they're in the Liberty Diner, and she
Mm.
says to Justin that the reason that his father attacked Brian is A, they're not ready to accept that you're sucking cock and taking it up the ass.
Yes.
Like, okay. Um, what's interesting to me though is do you think, Ronnie, not necessarily about the cock in the ass, but
I
do you
I think about those things, yes.
do
But
you
go
think
ahead.
about it? Okay, well, I'm glad to know that. Um, you know, do you think though that in terms of being gay, there is that stereotype that,
Hmm.
when you talk about gay issues, people like to think of it. I mean, it goes back to when we talked about reality TV and when there's, gay people highlighted, especially gay men, that a lot of the straight community thinks it's automatically they have to talk about sex and the bedroom. But like, my question is, do you think about a straight couple and, them tying each other up, them, being swingers, them going on a cruise and all being naked? Like all of that exists in the straight
Mm.
community. Like, are people imagining those scenarios?
Are they imagining pegging? Like all of it. Yeah. You know, this is why I said this is not, I have got years and years of broadcast experience, but this was a deeper thing. So to what you said about reality TV, I guess I watch a lot of old reality TV. I was just recently watching old Real World Philadelphia and
Mm.
how obviously it was so authentic, Karamo's storyline was so authentic, but it was not really by him, maybe a little bit by him because he was still sort of maybe coming into his own, although I think he was out for many years prior. But like the way the show itself and the characters, or even the reunion host asks questions, they made it such a gigantic big deal about like how Willie was the effeminate gay man and Karamo was something like we've never seen this before. And in fairness, I guess we had not, but also I didn't think Karamo really was all the way whatever was being portrayed, just like I don't think Willie was all the way, on this side of what was being portrayed. So that's just to the comment of what you were saying about like when we see the visualization or the representation, like what it used to look like. Why did I bring all that up? What were we talking about?
Well, I think you were just talking about how, like I was saying that reality TV, like when they put a gay person
Oh,
on
yes,
reality
yes,
TV,
yes.
that's
Debbie.
sex. Well, remember
Yes.
Ramona Singer even questioned Andy Cohen, like when he was digging into her life on the reunion, she said, "Well, who do you sleep with?" Do you remember that line? Like
Oh,
she
yes, yes,
started
yes.
to go
Mhm.
into, well, should I talk about what you do in the bedroom, Andy?
Oh, well, okay. So now I mean, I brought that up just because you talked about reality TV, and I do think that's, yeah. I mean, a little bit of is the lack of knowledge. Again, that I watched that Real World Philadelphia, and when I went back to watch it, I'm thinking like, oh my God, Karamo was so this, and Willie was so that, and come to look at it, like no, they were very much the same in a lot of ways, but we were never really able to see that. So yes, people have a vision of what they think now. What I thought was fascinating, and I was going to ask you this regardless, so I'm glad this comes up, because we were of course talking about Queer as Folk, but I remember loving. Did you like Looking at all on HBO?
Oh, I really liked Looking.
I know there was always the comparison. I feel like can't there just be room for both, But I
Yeah.
remember really, really, really loving Patrick and Richie's. I think it's season 1, episode 5, which everyone talks about that show, that episode. For the people that like the show, and Patrick was a little bit like all of us, and he was very much, when Deb says, oh, they've got to just like, face these realities. Patrick on Looking had said, oh yeah, my parents are going to be thinking this and this, some very vulgar language. And Richie goes, well, being gay doesn't have to do with like what you do in the bedroom. Like it's more than that. So yeah, to so many ways we're shortchanged, where that's the first thing that can be looked at. I don't want to say everyone, we're very evolved, now. But yeah, it certainly is something that I'll say it like this, like when I think when we all first come out, you think of that a little bit more. You're very protective of all that.
Hmm.
I think when you later on in life, you're like, who gives a damn how anyone really feels? But it's definitely in your mind in a way that it would never be for your straight counterparts. You're right. You're not doing all of the nastiness and making it such
Yeah.
a thing. You
Well,
just
or I will say straight sex comes up in conversations
in a
very
normalized way.
normalized. Exactly. That
Yeah, I mean,
like,
there was a
oh,
movie, American Pie, and there was all of the very going there type moments, but no one batted an eye
yeah.
whatsoever. But you
Or
talk
like
about,
people will say, oh, your teenage son, he's probably like jerking off to Playboy, that like it's just like, oh, Playboy, of course he would have those magazines, or of
yeah,
course they're watching porn, right? But
yeah,
um like I don't want to say, I'm just saying people aren't necessarily trying to dig deep, deep, deep into like every layer of what a straight couple does in the bedroom.
yeah,
I think,
yeah,
again, I'm not saying I think we should feel empowered sexually, but
yeah.
even me being an LGBTQ scholar, like, I'm gay, Ronnie, but like investigating literature and culture from
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
perspective as LGBTQ issues, like there's been times when I was getting my PhD that I would have the question asked, um, by those who are gay. It usually came from someone who was gay who would say, I'm gay, but I'm not really doing anything LGBTQ related. And I'm like, why do you have to say that to me? Like, do you want a cookie? Like, I'm
Yeah,
not
what's
sure.
the point of that comment? I wonder.
Or they would
What is?
call me an activist. They'd be like, oh, you're an activist. That's why you studied those topics.
Mm,
And I'm like, that's not what an activist is someone, you know, yes, I do consider myself speaking out for LGBTQ issues, but that's different than necessarily studying culture.
Well, I also
It
feel
was,
like I've said this, like in many ways we're lucky because
Mhm.
I don't know that I would have wanted to learn so many different aspects of the queer culture. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, this is so, in terms of the human experience and the richness of it all, like, well, it was a play, of course, but then the normal heart,
Mhm.
boys in the band, and the band played on Russell T Davies,
Yeah.
the original Queer as Folk. He had It's a Sin, like
Mhm.
fellow
Angels in
travelers
America.
on Showtime. Yeah, Angels in America. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
I would have never, maybe I would have, maybe these stories would have crossed my mind or whatever, or I would have been exposed to them, but I think they're brilliant. So for somebody to make it like, because you're intrigued with that culture, that you're somehow like making a fuss, I don't really think it is that. I think it's really the human experience, um so that's interesting. That is
Well,
interesting for it to be defined as like you're supporting or rocking out with like this type of material, and it's like, no, it's just things that mean something to me, things that I see myself in. Yeah.
well, and to bring up another play, The Inheritance by Matthew Lopez, which I saw on Broadway right before the pandemic. It was in two parts.
Oh, right.
And like the whole premise of the play is we need to look back to our queer forebears like E.M. Forster or even Oscar Wilde,
Hmm.
Virginia Woolf, um, you know, Marsha P. Johnson, like the Stonewall,
Yeah.
how every movement has shaped where we are now. And I do think I will say there are queer people who want to learn the history, and there are those who I think have forms of internalized homophobia where they want to be quote unquote normalized. They want to be as assimilated as possible. And I don't fault them because they could have unsupportive parents. I have very supportive parents, so I'm not in that camp. And I think we do see that with, I would say we even see that with our characters here. Like um Emmett and Michael are totally different. I
Yeah.
mean, even Brian is out in the workplace, but he's so frustrated that his friend Michael is closeted in the workplace. So there is a lot of tension happening between them.
That is just so interesting because the Emmett character is such like worthy of like a deep dive. I don't think I'm the smartest person to attack that deep dive, but at the same time, like Emmett was somebody that people, and he is over the top and it is a bit of a caricature, but at the same time, is it? And who gives a damn? The fact that I don't want to speak for anybody, but a lot of people didn't necessarily support that character initially in its original run, but now, like for me, I'm like, live Emmett, go for it. I'm
Oh yeah.
totally
Oh, Peter
loving what
Page is amazing. Yeah.
yeah, I'm loving what was brought to it. But we get in these spaces. I don't, who is we in this case, but people get in these spaces where they're like, oh yeah, like I'm not that though. Again, you mentioned it, assimilated. I'm assimilated to this. So like what you see there, that's what made the show so darn complex. I said it at the beginning. Like you're like not getting a window into anything. You're getting a window into American Pie all day, every day. Biggest movie when I was right out of high school, but you're getting one window into this life, and then it's so blunt and in your face, you have to make that decision. Oh no, I'm not like, even if I'm like that, quote unquote, I'm not
Mhm.
like that.
Well,
And in many ways,
and
that's what makes it fascinating.
and let's take American Pie just as an example because I think it actually illustrates Justin's father's psyche in a way,
Mhm.
which is remember I think I was in elementary school when it came out, but
Mhm.
I've like seen it, and seen all the scene with the pie and like the masturbating. Isn't
Mhm.
it interesting though how comical, quote unquote, that scene was with a straight character because he was a virgin?
Yeah.
Um, could you imagine if that was a gay son who then was fucking a pie? Like, do you think people would have thought that was comical then, or do you think they would have thought he was a pervert?
I gotta say, you're good at your work. Because that just threw me. That threw me all the way. But yeah, I mean, I literally was that age. And when I think about those movies, like I'll talk with my straight brother, and the term that I usually use is like, they were fine movies for the time, especially for me, because like while they were in high school, I was in high school. But I always say they don't really like hold up anymore. You know what I mean? And that's not like they're problematic or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying like they made sense to me at a time that, that was all that life could be. You know what I mean? In high school, I would have never dared to really understand, that I would be out years later. Um, in my mid to late 20s, it took a little while. So it's just what acceptance is. And sometimes when you're not fully confident, you don't want to challenge that acceptance. You want to get along, go along to get along. And so that's what you do. And that's why those movies were so comforting. And then I watched them with a different lens. I'm not mad at them or whatever, but yes, like you're just like, damn. I mean, obviously a terrible example, totally different kind of movie. But I loved Love Victor. I thought it was cute. I thought it was cute. Yeah, it didn't go there, and it wasn't like all. It had a little bit of a happy ending or whatever the case. It was all nice and tied up in a bow, but I just thought that was really cool for whoever was the same age that I was when American Pie came out or whatever it was for you. I thought that was amazing.
Well, we're getting a lot of teen gay redemptive arcs, like
Mm,
Red, White, and Royal Blue. Like we're getting the hyper romanticized
yeah, no, like
queer
almost like
queer
normalized.
films.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
and
I
which
think
is
they want to show that there doesn't have to be a Brokeback Mountain tragedy. And I think for the longest time, we were always getting the death of the character who
yeah,
was
yeah.
gay. Or, um, you know, I really loved Call Me By Your Name. Like, I like the narrative. I think it's
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
interesting. The age difference is kind of similar with O'Brien and Justin, but there, the parents are really understanding, which is interesting. But I do want to ask you, Ronnie, what do you think, even though we completely disagree with Justin's father's psyche and his approach and all of that.
Mm-hmm,
Do you
mm-hmm.
think there is an issue with Brian pursuing a 17-year-old like Justin? Or is Justin completely in control of his
Oh,
thoughts?
no. I mean, yes, there is issues with that for sure. Um yeah, there are some issues with that for sure. The one interesting thing, maybe in the basis of I knew we were going to break down the show a little bit after, I wasn't just watching for entertainment this time. Um the character of Justin, we see it throughout the series. We of course have all watched the series. We're going back and rewatching, but like those little moments, like towards the end of the episode here, the human side that Brian starts to step into, and you could see it in terms of the actor. You're reading it in his eyes, in his compassion. So while there is a huge challenge with what you just said, um, it's just so odd that like Brian is just so ruthless in this world, and he'll run through them like Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
through the weekend, no heart whatsoever. And the dynamic between the two gives you this sense of like, how did Brian get there? How did he
Well,
how did he lose his heart? And some
yeah.
little ways, I don't know if it's Justin specific, but it allows Justin to have a little bit, it allows Brian to be a little more human. Yeah.
Well, and I have to say, I love Jen's line. I have to say, I think this episode has some of the most quotable lines because I was like,
Right, right,
usually I'm
right.
writing down just um hard hitting moments, but like I was writing quotes. So I love when she goes to Brian's office and said, "You seduced him, you fucked him. Like he's your
Oh
responsibility."
my gosh.
Uh, and but it is, did he seduce Justin? I question that. Hi, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and when I'm not here on the podcast, I am consulting with small businesses, undergraduate students, graduate students, podcasters, and those in media. So, if you're curious about the work that I've done with my consultation services, you could just type me in on Google, Ivory Tower Boiler Room, and you'll see a few reviews pop up. I've worked on college admission essays for undergraduate students. I've revamped and expanded a small business's social media marketing campaign right here in Port Jefferson, New York. And I've also worked on a graduate student's thesis for her physician assistant program. So if you want to seek me out or inquire about my consultation services, just email me. That's the easiest way to reach me at ivorytowerboilerroom@gmail.com. That's easy to remember. And 'tis the season for college admission essays, both undergraduate and graduate, thesis writing, dissertation writing. Do you want to create a podcast and you don't know where to begin? Media work, um, how to open a TikTok, how to start creating videos on TikTok, what to do with your Instagram. All of that I have done. So just reach out to me. Hi, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and I'm really excited to talk to you all about one of our ITBR sponsors, Broadview Press. Broadview Press is an independent academic publisher in the humanities that produces high quality, pedagogically useful books for use in university and college classrooms. They publish mainly in English studies, writing, philosophy, and history. They are always publishing with an eye towards diversity, building a strong list of titles from women, people of color, and authors from other marginalized groups. If you haven't heard my Broadview Press interviews, you need to. Recently, I just had on Dr. Shannon Day, who talked about her book, Beyond the Binary, Thinking About Sex and Gender. And in the summer, I had on Dr. Jason Holt, who gave us all a comprehensive history of what it means to be a philosopher who studies sporting culture. And of course, we went back to ancient Greek, literature, mythology, history to look at the roots of athleticism. And last year, I had on Dr. Jeffrey Andrew Weinstock, who's actually going to be coming on the podcast soon to give his thoughts on the new Fall of the House of Usher Netflix series. He talked all about pop culture for beginners. And Broadview Press is offering an exclusive discount because of our sponsorship. So head to broadviewpress.com where you're going to see such a wide range of literature. Use the code Ivory Tower, IVORYTOWER for 20% off site-wide all of their books. Again, it's broadviewpress.com. Enjoy your reading. I am here in Port Jefferson, New York, on Long Island, in one of my favorite stores. It is the Soapbox NY, a bath and body boutique. I'm here with one of the co-owners, Janine. Hi, Janine.
Hi, Andrew. How are you? Thank you.
Good. So I know you have many winter scents to walk us through. So let's
Yes.
get started.
This is from company Michelle Design Works, another one of our favorites. Room spray that you can use any room in your house, just kind of freshens up the room a bit.
Then what is this by Michelle Design
Also by
Works?
Michelle Design Works is Winter Blooms, one of their new scents this holiday season. It's great. It's a hand wash. You can use it in your kitchen or your bathroom.
And then here's something to follow it up with.
Exactly. It's a hand and body lotion.
And then what is this beautiful decorative candle here?
One of our favorites that we actually sell
Mhm.
all year round because it's so popular. This is the scent of Fraser Fir by Times.
I think I'm becoming addicted to it.
Yes, I think you are because you already own one, I believe.
I own one, and it is a decorative candle for me because I'm about to open it, but it's just in such
I know the
a
packaging
beautiful
is, I don't know what's better,
package.
the packaging or the scent,
I'm
but
using
it's
it as a
wonderful.
holiday decoration. So I'll
Well,
get to the candle eventually,
yes, you
everyone.
will. But it's wonderful because with Times and their Fraser Fir, not only do they carry the candles, but they also make it in the scents in the diffuser, in soap, the hand lotion, the hand soap. It's just a great line and a great scent.
So, Janine, how can everyone out there get their hands on your hand and body and even pajama products?
Well, we'd be more than happy to see you in our shop. We're located at 18 Chandler Square in Port Jefferson Village. You could always call us to place an order. We're happy to ship to you. Our phone number is 631-509-1424. You can place an order on our website, soapboxny.com. And you could also find us on Instagram or TikTok at the Soapbox NY.
So many options.
Mhm.
I can't wait for all of you out there to just enjoy what I love so much about the Soapbox NY. So, with
Yeah,
that,
thank you so much.
happy winter, everyone. I think Justin, like thinking back to how I would have been in Justin's headspace, and
Mhm.
everyone here knows, like I did have older lovers when
Mhm.
I was 17 to 18. So,
Mhm.
I thought I was making that decision. Now, were they trying to use me for certain use me in terms of shaping me? Probably. Um, I think that though Justin is ruthless in continuing to pursue Brian.
Mhm.
Um, but I agree with you. Like, I think he sees Justin's age, like his naiveness, even that Justin doesn't know how to make a salad, like, which was hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, it's endearing, even though Brian vocally says he can't stand Justin's um actions and his personality. Like, you're starting to see the layers of Brian really um peel back, and we are getting, I think this episode 8 is the turning point. It really
Mhm.
feels like something has changed in their relationship.
Well, yeah, people don't get that hardened shell, that protective nature, that those walls up for no reason. And so, Brian, I don't even think it's about, it could have been anybody, but it happens to be Justin in this situation that is like, when I think this is in so many different ways, not even relationships, but when you're sort of jaded in whatever that it is, in this case Brian, within the way he dates and carries himself out in his conquests on the show, he's so hard, he's so rigid, he's so jaded.
Mhm.
And when we all go through these moments of being jaded for whatever reason, once we see that charm in someone else, it just really opens us up to like, look at how life could be if we're not as guarded. And that's really what the beauty of this show is. And I have not watched all of the original Russell T Davies version, but I believe it had a lot of that heart as well in that version too. Can I get your thoughts of the reboot? I mentioned the reboot a little bit earlier. Did you watch it and did you like it, or?
I haven't watched it yet because I'm
Oh,
gonna
okay.
watch it. I'm waiting until after I finish this first season, and
Oh,
then
okay.
maybe doing a special episode on it with like a few of you who've been on the
Oh,
podcast.
that'd
Like,
be
maybe
fun.
we'll have like a group just
How
chat about it,
fun.
because I have heard a lot of mixed reviews, but I really need to go into it with an open mind. But
I would encourage
I
you to go in with an open mind. And yes, we should do a group, like a cocktail hour, virtual
yeah, a
cocktail hour,
cocktail hour. Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
it. I mean, the problem with it is like, again, I don't know why. I don't know if this is what we were talking about prior to recording, but in general, like why all, film and television programming, it's just put so much credibility into like, well, what do you think, Twitter? It's like that should be, of course, a nice, open form of conversation for the fan base, but the fan base shouldn't control the show. And I think just if I can here,
Yeah.
I think the more modern version of Queer as Folk, which again would have been the third version of the show, I think it was a fine show. But that damn social media gives so many like red flags that you can't even enjoy it. So because I watched it to the end, I watched the finale, I was ready for a season 2, still holding out for a season 2 even though it is canceled. I think if you could take away that there was so much chatter, it's fun to watch, and it's great for like this era, you know what I mean? We had our era, the first Russell T Davies version had their era, and I
Yeah.
think it's wonderful. But I think about a show like this, would we have watched this show and loved this show as much, um with Brian and Michael and Ted and Emmett and everybody, if social media was just like picking it apart every second,
Well,
like
first of
that's,
all, social media would be like, why are there a bunch of these white people on the show?
and that
I
issue
mean,
is there, that issue there's an
I mean,
aspect
it's
to that,
there,
yeah.
but well,
Yeah.
I will say Brian does flirt with a black man in the car shop.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is a little, I
I
mean,
think
I
what's
will
good though
say,
is the nuance in the characters though, like Ted
oh, there's
represents
so much
something.
nuance.
Yeah, like Ted is just so unique in
Well,
this group of friends too. And
and the
yeah.
lesbian couple. I feel like Lindsay and
Oh
Melanie
yeah.
have a lot of And Debbie, like that the mothers.
Oh
I
my
think we
god,
get a
she's
lot of
so good.
mothers, like mother narratives that again, I think that like I've said this with other guests, Ronnie, but I think that when identity becomes like we have to create a show, not because like we want to show a certain narrative, but we need to appease the people and we're afraid of how they're going to respond when the show comes out. Like,
Yeah.
for example, I did an episode for Halloween about American Horror Story Coven, and I've rewatched it now. And I said, wow, this really was my favorite American Horror Story season because there are so many different um identities, but the women who are part of the series are bringing their A game and they all have such an important ensemble. Like that's
Mm.
what I like about Queer as Folk. It's an ensemble show. Like it's about the personalities. And for Coven, yes, there is, you know, uh black witches, there's white witches, there's a witch who has Down syndrome, like, but
Hmm.
they're all captivating. Pose is so captivating. I
Yeah.
think Pose is one of our best LGBTQ shows
Yeah.
recently.
I go back and rewatch that quite a bit. My favorite episode, I won't say it's like the best ever, but the one that makes me feel so good as a viewer is the when they all it's right after Blanca's nail salon gets burned down by Patty LaPone. And they need to go I guess they go out to Long Island, yes. Um
Oh, the
and
Hamptons.
the Hamptons, yes, and through Electra. That I don't know. I just love every aspect of a capsule episode with these beautiful four trans women on this television show, and the story holds up too. Like it's like the best of all worlds. I every hot summer on the hottest day, I'm like, I want to go back and watch that episode. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also the heart and the humanity of fantasy in that show. Like I really love when they play Stephanie Mills's Never Knew Love Like This
Oh God,
Before. And
yes.
is it Angelica or
Yeah, yeah. Angelica Ross is
Angelica?
the
Yeah,
actress. Mhm.
Angelica Ross, when she like comes out of the casket and is like still alive and has that like what would have happened if she came together with her parents. I think that those are moments that really hit the mark for me. And that's what this show does. It makes you it plays around with, and I'm gonna get a little literary, but Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote the Scarlet Letter in the 1800s, he had this beautiful way of talking about the romance, which is it is something both real and imaginary at the same time. And that's what I think Queer as Folk is. That's what I think why we love Sex in the City. It's both realistic but imaginary. Like the scenarios are hyper fantasies, but they're also we feel the nuances of the characters. Like they are
Yeah.
things we could see in everyday life. And I feel like now sometimes they're going into too much fantasy. Like I'm watching the new American Horror Story and it's really starting to fall for me.
Oh,
Um,
is this the one with Kim Kardashian?
yeah, and it's not because of her, but the
I
storyline is
watched two
just
episodes and I was gonna watch more because I watched the New York because I'm not American Horror Story viewer, but the first one I really watched was the New York one, which I guess was the most recent besides this one. So I'm
Mhm.
into it, but I guess it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, yeah, I don't know where it's going, but I'm still gonna watch it because it's
Yeah.
intriguing.
Hmm.
But like what I did want to ask you is the controversial question, which is um shows like And Just Like That or the new Queer as Folk. See, I don't know about the new Queer as Folk, so it's gonna be your hot take.
Hmm.
But so many new shows. Um, I mean, there's such a plethora of shows to watch first. Like there's
Hmm.
so much to consume. But then we do get a fan favorite show, right? Schitt's Creek during the
Hmm. Hmm.
pandemic. Um, like right now, I'm trying to think, what's a show like everyone said, okay, um, you have to watch it. Like this is required. Oh, Euphoria, I would say.
The White Lotus season 2 was really
Oh, White Lotus
wonderful.
season
I thought
two.
that was pretty good. Yeah, yeah.
But
Gilded Age, I'm loving. Yeah, yeah,
oh, I love Gilded Age. I can't wait to
yeah.
watch the new season.
Exactly.
But what I think is good about those shows is they're messy. Like they are the characters put their foot in their mouth. Like they are going to step in it. And
Oh,
a show
interesting.
like And Just Like That doesn't do it. Like I feel And Just Like That is really trying to teach a lesson, but you can tell they're really trying to
Hmm.
um educate who they think their audience is. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking we actually know more than you're telling us. Like we don't need all of this spoon fed to us.
Yeah.
Um, but there were moments in the new one just like that where I thought, okay, this feels fresh. Like this feels um relatable. You're
Hmm.
taking chances. I thought that it really hit its mark uh when Carrie was um maybe not Carrie. I was actually thinking that Miranda was starting to like hit more of a mark when she uh left Che. And I'm like, okay, Miranda's now finding herself. Okay, this is
Hmm.
good. And also, who is the comedian? Oh my goodness, I love
Oh,
following him on
Bobby
Instagram.
Lee. Bobby Lee. The
Oh wait,
one who
no,
worked with
well,
Carrie.
Bobby Lee's good. I'm thinking of the gay best friend of Charlotte.
Oh, Mario Cantone.
Yeah, Mario Cantone. He had
Yeah.
great moments.
Yeah. I that would be my one quick pushback. Not pushback, but like I feel
Yeah.
like we need more from him. We need more from him. We like
Oh, we
I
do.
really like yeah. Anyways, but I think everyone would love to see more Anthony, I think his character is. Yeah.
Anthony. But I think they're still putting him in that gay best friend stereotype role, which okay. But a question I have for you, like as we're wrapping up, Ronnie, which this has been a great discussion. You did not disappoint,
Oh.
so you had no reason to feel nervous. Is Do you think that like because you are such a huge Real Housewives fan, women are always talked about as gossiping. These
Mhm.
men are gossiping way as much as women. I mean, how about that gym scene? I thought that was so
Oh, I
comical.
loved the gym scene.
Like they go
Yes.
from one exercise to another. Like they're gossiping on the spin bike, they're gossiping on the rowing machine, they're gossiping with lifting weights. And I did think, you know what, men, because I do this too. We gossip all the time, but it's always centered around activities. And maybe it's because where we gossip is um centered on um I don't know, centered on um activities that are outside of the house. Like women when they're gossiping, it's at brunch or they're having
Mm,
coffee. Like is that the
yeah.
distinction of what we say is gossiping is where it takes place?
Well, maybe for gay men, queer people in general, maybe it's like the gossiping spaces or wherever you find as a safe space to you. You know, where
Mm.
is that? Is the question. But also, I mean, it almost feels like don't straight men gossip all the time about the damn football? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, just chatty patties all day, every day. So I feel like to a degree, it was women got shortchanged for that narrative of like they are so gossipy or what was the term, like, well, men, they're the type that, like, they have their issue and 2 days later they're over it. I'm like, are you really that resentment that you're holding, are you really over it? Like, but it was just something that was fed and perpetuated and within the stereotypes. We see it on TV and film, so you start to kind of believe. That's the thing, that's the power, as from film and television and all of the different mediums, that
Mm.
they do tell a story, and after a while you sort of buy into it in a little bit of a way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's oh, what did they call that? Something bias. Uh like when it's in marketing,
Mm,
people think if it continues to be in a publicity campaign that like it's not consumer bias, but
mm,
basically you're just verifying what someone's unconditional bias is. They're like, oh yeah, of course, women are the nags and the men get
right.
over things and the men don't have as much drama, right? Like I still hear that from
Yeah.
some straight guys. They're like, women have so much drama. You must be so lucky, Andrew, to be gay. It's funny now because like men will actually compliment me being gay by saying that I have less drama because I'm with another guy. And I'm like, if you only knew.
Yeah.
Like
And
not my
that's that.
boyfriend. I mean, my boyfriend and I, we have a good relationship, but you know, we all have drama. Like we all have to work through conflicts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like every group that you're looking at, there's just so much more nuance that sometimes wasn't always being seen. So I think as people, we all got to work towards, accepting that and like, allowing for more nuance to be, while at the same time, because I think you made a really great point. It was something along the lines of or was it when we were talking about Emmett? Like on some level, you want to contrast what is just a stereotype or just a Mario Cantone, Anthony, and just like that best friend. But on the other side of the coin, you're like, no, like rock out with your COCK out. I don't know if we could use vulgar language here.
Oh yeah,
so
you can say whatever you want.
It's so complex. Like that's what I think. Like I don't know. Like over 40 years old now. I know I look good, but still over 40 years old. It's like that's the one thing that I'm like. I used to always be so like the bitter bitch that I was. This is what it is, and so like almost like polarizing in that way. And I still have a lot of that in me for sure. I'm always going to stand on what I believe, but like some stuff just can't really come to an easy answer because it is a little complicated. Like the Anthony character you said, for and just like that, do we want to see more of him? And if we do, are we okay with just like more of his sassy ass one-liners, boom, boom, and boom? Like I think we would be okay with that because that's so much of who he is too. But like when you get brought down to only being that's where we have an issue. So I mean, I know it's the cliche comment, but it is so true. Representation matters. Like that's the one that like when people shun that, I'm like, no, but it really does. Like it really, really does.
Oh, I was thinking confirmation bias. That's what it is. Okay. It's a psychological term, but groupthink, it's type of groupthink. So like one of my final points is just, I think what you're showing me, Ronnie, like each of you who I get to have the pleasure to dissect, and, everyone I've had on so far are queer men, but, I'm going to have queer women on, and I'm excited for that. I definitely want to have like someone who's straight who wants to watch the show just to see their perspective.
Oh, nice.
But I do think that you're now having me think about male relationships in the sense of maybe when we think about even gossip and drama, you saying men going against each other with sports. I do think with men, sometimes there is more of a need to have an icebreaker to get to their emotions. Like, is the sport a way for them to enter into complexity with their friends because they're all gathered around a similar topic that they can then use as an outlet for them to really open up with each other and be vulnerable?
Wow. This is why this show is good. Because you know what I thought of immediately? Brian, though he's as big and like you said, he's out in the workplace, this, and this, he's also so reserved in terms of like real authentic emotion. So on that level, that is very much the side of him, in terms of his manhood. That like you got to wonder, like there's the push and pull with that. Like, like even though again, fierce as all can be, but like certain
but reserved. No, you're right.
Yeah, that is so interesting.
Except at the end, right? When he hears that Justin's father will never see Justin as who he is. That's when he's like, "Are you coming with me, Justin?" And I have to say that final scene between them gave me so much like butterflies. It was just such a beautiful Brian does love domesticity. Like you can tell he really is starting to fall for Justin, even though he wants to reject those feelings of needing a man in his life. Like, he's starting to become a puppy dog.
Well, like I said, I love the connection you have with anyone who is embarking on their experience, because once you again you get jaded in all these ways, you like forget the purity and the excitement of what life could bring. And so like I think we all relate to that. It's not really like a Brian and a Justin thing. It's like when you're around somebody that can make you feel that, you're like, wow, this person's got their whole life ahead of them. They haven't really like put up their guards and their walls yet. It's kind of amazing. And this show really does display that quite well,
Imagine that you're riding the Turner Classic Movie Great Movie Ride in Hollywood Studios. It's in the 1990s. As you're journeying through the Great Movie Ride, you pass the Wizard of Oz, where all of a sudden you see the Wicked Witch of the West ascend into Munchkinland in a cloud of smoke and flames. Well, that's the memory I have with the Great Movie Ride in classic cinema when I was at Disney in the 1990s as a young boy. And ever since that, I was hooked on classic cinema. Well, my friend Christian Garcia, friend of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, has a podcast that you all are going to love. It's called That Old Gay Classic Cinema, and he looks at queer themes in classic cinema like Vertigo, The Wizard of Oz, Sleeping Beauty, Mary Poppins, 101 Dalmatians, Hello Dolly. The list can go on and on and on. So follow him on Instagram at That Old Gay Classic Cinema. You can listen to his podcast on Apple and Spotify. And he also is on the premiere episode of our Queer as Folk podcast, where I'm rewatching every episode of Queer as Folk from 2000. And the episodes come out bi-weekly. So make sure you listen to his episode with me. And he's launching a rewatch show of Smash, where they're putting on a Marilyn Monroe musical. So he's going to be joined by co-hosts, a lot who are in the Broadway and theater industry, and I'm going to be on his first episode. So without further ado, get listening to That Old Gay Classic Cinema. Enjoy. LGBT stories are universal, but each one speaks to the individual heart and soul of the writer telling it. Do you have a story to tell? Or have you been moved by an LGBT book, film, painting, television show, or other form of media? Then the Gay and Lesbian Review wants to hear from you. The GNLR believes in bringing awareness to queer art and artists through reviews, commentary, and thought pieces in which the author relates their personal lives to a particular piece of art, a novel, a movie. In addition to the print magazine, the GNLR also publishes articles on its blog. So you can see all of this on glreview.org. That's glreview.org. Remember, you get 50% off your subscription of the GL Review magazine when you use the promo code ITBR50. That's 50% off your print or digital subscription when you use promo code ITBR50. To learn more about submitting an article for the GNLR, visit their writer's guidelines. The link is located at the bottom of their homepage. And if you have any questions, email Stephen Hemrick. That's STEPHEN.HEMRICK at glreview.org. The GNLR and its readers can't wait to see what you have to say. It really does.
And you said it.
Continue
Debbie,
to impress me.
Debbie is just phenomenal. Even that's Debbie's brother, right? Uncle Vic. Yeah.
Yeah, Uncle Vic is Debbie's brother.
I mean, even that is just, I always love. I always say, speaking back of representation, I love to see older characters on television in a very full way, and so even that, like, I really. Yeah, I mean, it's not like I had tears when I was watching the episode, but I definitely was feeling a lot of feelings,
Yeah, and I thought that even Debbie blaming Brian for provoking Justin's father, like, I'll let that sit with everyone, because I thought that was interesting that she's not necessarily Brian's cheerleader. So I think that, Debbie is also all of those who are trying to protect Justin. It's interesting to see how they're mentoring him. Like, I think each of the characters is mentoring. I mean, Melanie and Lindsay taking him in. Like, everyone is trying to mentor Justin in different ways. But I am curious what's going to happen when Justin actually takes the bull by the horns and says, no, this is who I am. And kind of reject.
Well, in many ways, I think we sometimes have that duty to show up for people. It's very much, you mentioned Pose and Blanca being under Elektra, and those fantastic flashbacks when Blanca was with the Shake and Go situation, and then she really became Blanca, and then she had her house. Like, it's just something you want to do, because if it was another situation where all the opportunity in the world was available to you, you may not think that. You might not even
Yeah.
understand that's a thing to look out
Well,
for.
and
Yeah.
isn't that the push and the pull, Ronnie, of being part of the LGBTQ community? In my opinion, it's like you want to be part of any community. Like if you're
Mhm.
part of a community, you also have to balance your own individuality. And it's not an easy answer. Like,
Yeah.
you still want your voice, even though you're going to start conforming to others' ideas in the community. So,
I have a question for you as we wrap, if
yeah.
if it's okay. So, like, how do you personally, kind of in the vein of what I was just saying, how do you show up when, like, do you have that little bit of bias? I guess I'll just go off like public figures. So there's all these public figures now, and there are so many people. It's so ravishing now in terms of what is out there representation wise.
Mhm.
When someone, like a young actor, a young queer actor, missteps, what side of the coin do you take on that? Do you take I'm gonna kind of always show support because there's not a lot of support out there to begin with? Or if you do that, do you end up being too, like, do you end up giving your community a pass? I know
Mhm.
that was like not really just like just a question. It was very like put together, but it's something that I always wonder. Like, do I hold down that, like Lord forbid, but if you ever made, a misstep, like, do I say I got to hold them accountable like 1,000% because I can't just be blind?
Mhm.
Or do I say, but this is a wonderful young man in the community doing wonderful things. He took one misstep. I know that the opportunities aren't always as available as others. Let's have that grace.
Well, with
That
missteps in general, I tend to not weigh in. Like I tend to just wait to see
that's good.
um like even with it's going to be unpopular, but the court of public opinion around Britney Spears, even though I want her fully to be liberated in her own life, I also
Mhm.
think that um we could have people quickly uh grouped themselves around a chant without necessarily knowing what they were articulating. Like, what does Free Britney mean when none of us are going to know the behind the scenes and what kind of help who's advocating for her?
Mm.
Like, that's where I'm more curious who's stepping up for that, who's helping that person who clearly does need guidance. And um, I think when we start to operate under the court of public opinion, um, I never like mob rule and I never like mob opinions. But like you asked about if a queer person stepped out of line. I guess one example in my mind someone who comes to my mind is Todrick Hall. And
That's a great example. Yeah.
I really like his music. I like his individuality, his artistic expression. And I never really understood why people were really like they're like, he's a villain on Big Brother. And I'm thinking he's on reality TV, like
Yeah.
um playing a game. I mean, you think that we have to be genuine on Big Brother, but again, was that because he's an easy target because he is a queer black man? Were people as outraged when Richard Hatch on Survivor was the villain? I mean, actually he is gay too. But like
Yeah.
were people as outraged when I'm just trying to think of an example. Were they outraged?
Well, you
Um
said I think we talked earlier, Jax Taylor,
yeah, Jax
wonderful
Taylor.
villain-esque reality star, but yeah, and people are mad for sure, but it is sometimes like certain situations get judged way harsher. He's such a wonderful example. I remember seeing his show, like Straight Out of Oz, I think it was called, and it was
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
that album's incredible.
He is right, isn't it actually really good? He's so talented, but he definitely does jump out the window sometimes. And so you're put in a situation where you're like, do you hold like this blind support because you're like, oh, this is somebody within the community, or should you be like, no, he needs to be very much held accountable. I don't know. I feel like sometimes I think there is room for the nuance, for sure. We keep talking about nuance, but the grace. I feel like sometimes when you look at the big picture, and you're like, oh, this person misstepped, but it's like, damn, I mean, there's enough challenges do I need to pile on? And you're right. The public mob mentality is so difficult. Like,
Well,
I don't even know why people weigh in on things all the time. Like, get a life.
so okay. On that note, this is great. A good queer as folk meets reality TV discussion, Ronnie. So how can everyone follow you? You know, how can they listen to you? All of those things.
Yeah, most everything is located centrally through randomlyronniejr.com. If you're on Patreon, do the keyword Randomly Ronnie Jr. If you're on YouTube, the keyword Randomly Ronnie Jr. And of course, when you're like searching like YouTube or TikTok or whatever, the hashtag that I usually use is hashtag randomly with Ronnie Jr. I'm somebody who came up in the, you know, I don't want to say early, but like 2002 was a long time. And that's when I started in radio and cut my teeth and honed my craft or whatnot. And navigating in the social media landscape has been absolutely challenging AF. It doesn't feed me spiritually. It doesn't make me happy in a lot of ways, but it is needed. I know a lot of times I'm just like overwhelmed with it. So I don't get to really succeed on that level, in the vein of like if you were to post 9,000 things all day, every day. So with that being said, if you do like anything that we did talk about, I'd 1000% appreciate you showing support to those platforms, because when I started, and I've had little TV appearances, TLC Network, Fuse TV, American Latino TV, segment produced at American Latino TV, worked at Complex Media, worked a podcast that I produced at VH1, like radio in New York, radio in LA, like all these things. I never thought it would be this hard in this social media space. And a lot of people are just like zooming past me. So I have a challenge with that. So yes, if you liked any of the nonsense that we said today, your support would be it'd be cool, man. It would be really cool.
Yeah. Well, not only are they zooming past you, but they're buying followers. Okay. And on that note, because they are, most people who have, I always say, don't look at the follower count because it's very artificial.
Well, listen, and the last thing, in the long run, this is why I took a connection to the work that you're doing. In the long run, yes, like I still to this day, I remember when it happened, when people started saying, oh, not to me because it never happened, but congratulations, you went viral. I never understood that we were giving a congratulations for going viral. You know, eating Tide Pods got you viral at one point. Like, going viral should never have been the thing. Now, your work being amplified for sure, but once it turned, because again, I've been in this business for a long time, once it turned to viral was the congratulations, I was like, do I even want to do this anymore? So with that being said, when I do this, when I do this, I want to do it where like it's going to feed me emotionally. And you taking on this show that is so easy to watch, it's fun to watch, highs and lows, Debbie's amazing. Yeah. But then to recap it and go deep into the series, challenging AF. But also the takeaway is so amazing. So that's who I'd like to connect with, is people who are on that same page. Yeah.
Well, and we're all finding each other. So, you know, that's what brings me hope in social media, but also that we're all engaging with each other. The engagement is what gets us through, and blocking out the virality of the white noise. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ronnie. This has been
problem.
Wonderful. And see everyone else back in the Queer as Folk space soon.
Yes.
Bye.